I think a materialist approach to things is very, very consistent with my experience in Christian social justice.
I feel like the deeper I get into anarchist practice, the deeper my faith is getting at the same time.
I would hope that, securing means of life for all would be something all people of faith would say, oh yes, that's at the basis of what we can believe.
And those who are most marginalized know the most about the truth, the good, and the beautiful.
To me, it's less that I think building class solidarity is a bad thing, as much as it seems like if you don't attend to things like anti-Black racism, that's always going to get in the way of building class solidarity, actually.
And when you go back, you find that a lot of revolutionary grassroots participatory movements, the precursors to what you could call the barrio assemblies and these grassroots neighborhood organizations, a lot of these were sponsored by the church.
What does it mean to say that the Christian tradition is internally contradictory and there are antagonisms there and you're always being faithful to some aspects and betraying other aspects?
Welcome to the Magnificast, a podcast about Christianity and leftist politics. I'm Dean Detloff. I'm a Catholic PhD student at the Institute for Christian Studies in Toronto.
I'm Matt Bernico. I teach media studies at Greenville University in Greenville, Illinois.
It's a very special episode of the Magnificast because, as you have probably seen from just watching social media, the Oscars happened. So this is a special Oscars edition of the Magnificast.
Oh boy, love the Oscars. So we're gonna go right to the source for all the best sort of Oscars coverage. And when I say right to the source, and I say Oscars coverage, I mean Rod Dreher. I mean, we gotta get Rod Dreher's hot takes on the Oscars.
The source himself.
The source himself. That's Rod, the source Dreher. Here he is with all of the hot takes. So Rod had a lot to say about a really fantastic film by Guillermo del Toro called The Shape of Water. Dean, have you seen that movie?
I have seen that movie. I did see it. I know The Shape of Water. I know all the shapes that it can be. Every shape that it can take. Now I know.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a great movie. I'm not really much of a film person. I usually stick to television and sort of the critical aspects. But Shape of Water is dope. Rod Dreher thinks some things about it, though. He thinks it's not quite dope at all. So Rod Dreher, kind of giving us his Oscar takes, wrote a really great blog post on the 5th, so the day after the Oscars. He wrote a blog post called Triumph of the Freaks, which is not a good look. Considering a lot of things.
Extremely bad, considering that the triumph that most people are celebrating was more awards given to minorities at the Oscars. So not a great headline. Losing the culture wars on that front.
Yeah, but it's okay. Maybe this faux pas Rod makes is because, as he admits very early on, that he does not watch the Oscars.
I'm so surprised.
Yeah, I know. Weird, right? I guess they don't have cable down in the old Benedict Option basement.
Down in Rachel Held Evans' basement, the cable just doesn't go down that way. She can afford 2 cable boxes, and she's not putting one in the basement.
Right. All they have is a felt board with the little magnetic Bible story characters, and that's the entertainment.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, anyways, having not seen the film Shape of Water does not stop Rod and his massive intellect in talking about the movie and sort of commenting on it. So Rod is responding to someone who he just refers to as a reader, which I think is just, we know he's just making this up, but Rod got a note from a reader that says this: "The Academy used to play it safe with controversy, but now it's moving the Overton window faster than in real life. Who'd have thought 1 decade ago the most prestigious award in the film industry would go to a film about bestiality and casting it in a positive light?"
You know what I would say? Spare the rod, spoil the reader.
Oh my god. And then Rod goes on to sort of summarize his reader's thoughts and remarks, saying this: "In other words, You can have sex with anyone or anything you want because love is love and love wins.
I've heard that somewhere. Love wins.
Yeah, I have heard that somewhere. Okay, so Rod then concludes his article reminding conservative Christian readers of the following points. These are really important, so everyone buckle in. So Rod reminds us, he reminds conservative Christian readers, not us other Christian readers, just the conservative ones. Rod says, there are no politicians on earth capable of turning this tide of decadence. The power of culture is far too strong. You cannot expect your children to be salt and light to a culture that gives its highest honor to a movie celebrating bestiality as an act of liberation and a, quote, love letter to love, which is a comment about the film. And then finally he says, soon, this is my favorite line, soon, people who believe the things you do will be regarded as perverted and dangerous to the common good. Are you ready for that?
I'm
so
ready.
Yeah, I'm so ready. I'm so ready. I love the last line because soon, people who believe the things you do. I mean, it's not really being explicit about the things that you believe, but just like kind of leaving it as an empty sort of basket to fill with your worries and fears. It's great. It's sort of that classic Rod stuff that he does. That classic Rod rhetoric.
That real hot Rod take.
That hot Rod. The Rod-toric. So anyways, that's pretty wild. Man, Rod should just watch that movie and maybe chill out a little bit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Though he might find that he bears a striking similarity to a certain character in that film, and it is not the fish person, and it is also not the protagonist. I'm not going to say who it is, but if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about.
You know. Well, okay, so that's the Magnificast TM Oscar coverage, but now we're going to move on to the Magnificast TM Oscar coverage. That's right. Time for some Pope news about our favorite Oscar Romero.
He did it. He's gonna be a saint. He made it.
Yeah, so that's pretty neat. Every like vaguely leftist Christian knows about Oscar Romero because he's pretty cool. Dean, what does it take to become a saint? How does that happen?
Oh boy, it takes a lot of things. It takes all kinds of stuff. You got to get some miracles in there. You got to get some people on your case. You got to get someone to advocate for you. There's all kinds of very fun bureaucratic details you can look into. But the thing that was holding Oscar Romero back for a while was the confirmation of the last miracle that he needed to be officially a saint. He's already blessed, but he's got to be a saint. So Pope Francis confirmed it, and that puts him on the road to sainthood. There's more details about it, but the most interesting thing is that Oscar Romero is a fascinating character, not only in the history of the church, but also the history of El Salvador. So, huge deal. Here in Toronto, for example, there's a pretty significant El Salvadoran community, and they are hosting a mass to celebrate this news, which is pretty cool. And each year, actually, there are a variety of leftist groups that celebrate Oscar Romero and commemorate his assassination and martyrdom. He represents a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but he's celebrated by Christians and leftists alike in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's a lot to say about Oscar Romero. I mean, he lived a really fascinating life and a really amazing life. He was murdered while giving mass. That's pretty a wild story. Something that's really interesting. So I think a really good example of some of the more radical end of what the gospel means to people. So much so that people killed him for it. There's a lot of quotes to a lot of really good things that Oscar Romero said that we can kind of take and reflect on. Here's a quote that always kind of sticks out to me when it comes to Romero. He says, "A church that doesn't provoke any crisis, a gospel that doesn't unsettle, a word of God that doesn't get under anyone's skin, a word of God that doesn't touch the real sin of society in which it's being proclaimed. What gospel is that?" It's one of those cool things that, I don't know, resonates with me in sort of my experience of Christianity, in the sense that if the church doesn't sort of make you uncomfortable in some way or respond to real crises in the world, then, I don't know. Yeah, what kind of gospel is that is right.
Yeah, that's a good, snappy question for sure. also interesting because in his particular society, the real sin that he was proclaiming the gospel in, I mean, there were many, but one of them was a brutal right-wing, far-right government that was supported and propped up by the United States, both Republicans and Democrats, bipartisan supporters of fascism in Latin America. And Romero was ultimately, his story is so fascinating because he was ultimately murdered by a right-wing death squad, but he was appointed to be the bishop in El Salvador because people sort of felt as though he would be a non-controversial figure. They thought he'd be a kind of relatively conservative guy who wouldn't really cause any unrest in an already unstable society. And the death of a very close friend of his who was a Jesuit prompted him to start speaking out, and speaking out so much so that they couldn't handle him being around. So it's fascinating because Romero wasn't even a Marxist, despite the fact that there were many Marxists and guerrilla groups in El Salvador. And he was very intent about saying that he wasn't a Marxist, but he was still murdered because fascists can't handle anybody who's not a fascist. So I'm really curious to see what this is going to mean for the church in particular. I mean, who knows what it could mean, but for American Catholics, it should at least give people some reasons to maybe look a little bit more into how American imperialism has affected their own church community around the world.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the thing that I'm always concerned about when things like this happen is just that these figures don't get sort of like whitewashed or robbed of their sort of radical potential. That would be, I guess, the worst thing that would happen. Like, if we read this quote kind of like outside of the context of which it happened, like outside of that story that you just kind of told, it would be kind of a bummer, because like, yeah, I mean, the sin he's speaking out against, is that type of fascism. So right. It would be a bummer if it was just sort of liberalized, individualized, but anyways, I don't know. Who knows what it'll mean? You're right.
Cool. Well, that's our Oscar episode. Thanks for joining us. This is the end of the Oscar special. But you're in luck because we're doing a back-to-back episode this week. We're also celebrating our 50th episode. Pretty exciting stuff. We've been doing this podcast for a little over a year officially, and we've got some fun things to chat about and kind of reflect on throughout the episode and think through what we want to do in the future. And we are pumped about it. But first, as always, we're going to talk about some iTunes reviews, or at least one iTunes review.
So we have one iTunes review. That's nice. And I think this is from your wife, Dean. I'm pretty sure Emily wrote this one. It says by Emily with some like little squiggly kind of guys by it. Pretty sure it's
like her.
From...
I don't know. Squigglies. I've never seen her. I've never seen squigglies around her name myself.
The title of this post is clap emoji, clap emoji, clap emoji, and it's 5 out of 5 stars. So this user, whoever they might be, really, writes, "Good work, gals. Proud of you both." Heart emoji. So
that's good.
Something to think about.
I think this is just it must be a real strange coincidence, because Emily and I just finished watching The Last Man on Earth, that TV show, where there's a great part where they challenge one of the characters, Tandy, to give up masculine generalizations in this new apocalyptic world. So he stops saying guys, and he says gals in order to balance everything out. So yeah, it just must be like a really strange coincidence that this extremely cool user would be also bucking the same kind of trends.
Man, what a just really interesting happenstance.
Small world.
Yeah. Thanks, Emily, whoever you might be.
We asked people to send us voicemails and emails for the special edition, the special episode. And I mean, we got just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We couldn't keep up. We were deleting them. There were too many, and so we've called it down to only the best. And we have 2 very good voicemails that we'll play. We're gonna let some of our coveted airtime be taken up by these gracious folks. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and roll one of these hot voicemails?
Hi, you two. It's Catherine from Friendly Anarchism. Congratulations on your 50th episode. That's super exciting. I'm glad to hear that. And I just wanted to let you know how wonderful it is to have Christian leftist comrades, especially podcasters. You always lift up my day. Keep doing your good work. Hopefully I'll talk to you again soon. All right, bye.
So that's a great message from Catherine of the podcast Friendly Anarchism. She was on our podcast a few episodes back. We did a joint episode with her, and she is amazing. She she mentioned that it's nice to have Christian leftist comrades who are also podcasters, and we feel the same way about her. It was pretty wild when we first discovered that she was also making a podcast, and that it's interesting, especially because she does it from an anarchist perspective, and we tend to be a little more Marxist on this podcast, hopefully not frustratingly so, but nevertheless. And I think it's so cool that we've been able to develop a conversation with her and hopefully help contribute to a more unified Christian leftist conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Friendly Anarchism is so good. It has been a really wonderful thing to have met her and to listen to her podcast. It's cool.
Yeah, everyone else should listen to it, obviously. Not only because she, left us a good voicemail, but also because she's extremely cool. She has a lot of really cool guests on as well.
Yeah.
And is a little more focused on, like, activism and really getting out in the world and actually doing something, which is really neat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely worth your time.
All right, we've got another one coming at you. Here goes.
Hey, Magnificast, this is Steven in Houston. My question for you guys is, what would a good book recommendation be for somebody who is potentially interested in leftist ideas, but is very normal, not like theory-oriented, or but still religious, if that makes sense? Thanks for all the good work you guys have been doing. It's been a great podcast. I've tried to share you with all my friends. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Steven from Houston. That's a great message. What do you think, Matt? What's a good book recommendation for someone who's not theory-oriented but interested in leftist ideas?
If you're not a theory-oriented person, that's okay, because it means you're probably not as boring as us. I don't know. You could probably suggest a lot of books. I think that if you're not really interested in theory, I mean, maybe you could read Howard Zinn's History of the United States. That's a pretty cool thing. That's more of a history book and maybe sometimes theoretical. I don't know, depending on what your kind of definition of theory is. But I think that a really cool place to start is actually maybe with fiction. I think that fiction's a really good catalyst for some of these good leftist thoughts. Like Ursula Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest is definitely like a book that sparks, I think, lots of sort of leftist ideas. I don't know if you guys have ever read it. Have you ever read it, Dean?
I have not read it.
Oh man, it's good. It's like 190 pages. It's a pretty short read, and it's really fun and interesting. So it's about colonization and definitely about colonialism, but it all happens in space.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. So I don't know. I think that kind of stuff is great. That's a good place for people to get started, just kind of thinking about those ideas and how they work. If you can make some of those abstract ideas more concrete through a good sort of fiction narrative, I guess that probably helps. I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah, I like that. Fiction is a good place to start. In terms of just, I guess, introductory sort of theory-ish books, one book I always recommend is Terry Eagleton's book, Why Marx Was Right. He comes from a specific Marxist tradition, and that has its own limitations, I guess. But he does sort of deal with a lot of basic objections to Marxism, and that's how he frames the book. So each chapter is a different objection. So one will say something like, I don't know, Marxism denies what's essential about our human nature. And he'll be like, well, that's not really the case. This is what Marxists think about that. Or Marxism killed a bunch of people in history, and then he'll talk a little bit about that and what's going on there. So that's a really accessible book. My mom bought it for me for Christmas one year, and I'm always thanking her for it. So
cool mom.
That's a quality book. Also, a number of actually primary leftist texts can be somewhat accessible. I think, for example, Peter Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread, that's a really great anarchist text and pretty easy to follow along, I think. Like intentionally trying not to be too heady. Yeah, I guess in terms of religious stuff, there's all kinds of liberation theology that will get you into it. We mentioned the Gospel in Solentiname on here a few times. I think that's a great introductory text because you actually just see people who are also not theory-oriented, nevertheless coming to revolutionary conclusions about the biblical text.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's a number of ways in, for sure. Those are two, or three, I guess, sort of books that I think... at least were really useful to me, and books that I keep kind of returning to when I have when I need to clarify something or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. That all sounds like some good suggestions. Oh, you know what book is really cool that I think is accessible? I don't know. It's maybe not super accessible, but I think it's worth reading for people who are just kind of getting started, is David Graeber's book on debt. It's pretty cool.
I never read that book, actually.
Oh, yeah. It's neat. It's like anthropology, so it is kind of heady sometimes, but... check it out. It's good.
There you go.
Yeah.
Check it out. Okay, those are the voicemails we're going to talk about. They are also, truth be told, the only 2 voicemails that we got. So, whatever. Send us some more if you want to. But let's turn now to emails, the textual medium that we mostly work in. Matt, what were some emails that really stuck out to you that we got?
Yeah. Okay. So here's one email that we got from a listener. This is unlike Rod Dreher's unlike Rod Dreher's readers. This one's real.
Yeah, you can identify yourself, but we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Just in case you don't want to be.
Yeah, that's right. So this person writes, "Dear Magnificast sages, thank you. Thanks for this. Your experiment in public discourse of Christianity and leftist politics. You have a good thing going, and I look forward to many more topics, interviews, and good tune/sound effects transition music to come." Oh boy.
Us too.
Yeah, me too. I've been journeying left from my former understanding of the world since # Black Lives Matter and immigration issues. Somehow I still find myself a member of a lukewarm, somewhat theologically conservative church that has some good practices of solidarity with neighbors. Marxism isn't a topic for a Bible study there. Yeah, okay. Probably my church too. But I find that people are at least turned off to bad things and skeptically hold liberal politics on issues of, quote, biblical justice. Learning from the Christian leftists, I've been able to keep a practice of being called to pragmatic material solidarity to my neighbors and my neighborhood by my church, while starting to organize more broadly with a revolutionary political theology. Thanks for being a voice and gathering people on Twitter, etc. Some good memories for me are the theologian church history apps are good. Maria Shea Armstrong is good. Daniel Camacho is good. Katie Grimes is good. Marika Rose is good. Books like
they are all good.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I know. Books like Fidel and Religion, etc. Would love to see Roland Bohr, more Latin American liberation theology. Cool. And Palestinian theology of struggle, revolutionary politics and theology. Yeah, good point. Palestinian theology of struggle. All right. Also, the practical stuff, the practical church stuff is really good. Sarah New, John Thornton Jr., Kaya Oaks, Catholic Workers, Brenda and Joe, Friendly Anarchism, Catherine. Oh, right. She's from Friendly Anarchism. We just talked about that. Gospel and Solentiname, etc. And then for sure, this person is asking for this thing by name. So listen, it's not our fault. More Pope news. So this episode, you're getting lucky because you got it once since, like, I don't know, episode 10 probably. More Joel Osteen campaign, yeah, still on that one. And current event blurbs from a Christian leftist take, like the Nazis Are Bad episode. That's good. Yeah, that was a great episode.
That was after Charlottesville.
Yeah, that's right. As a churchgoer, okay, this is sort of the conclusion here. As a churchgoer who is being radicalized by a number of things and this podcast plus adjacents, your content and followers have been a great community for me to take part in. I've even had great connections in real life with this community. Oh, that's so nice.
Huh, that's cool.
Dang, that's so cool. Shoot. Well, okay, so this person is basically saying everything we've done is good and to keep doing it. So I appreciate that.
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, we've got almost everyone in there, so that's awesome. I'm glad this person is so pleased with the things we've done, and I guess we'll have to do more Pope news. Pope news is sometimes hard because sometimes the Pope just doesn't do things.
It's true, and sometimes the Pope does things that are lame. I guess we could talk about that. We could take a more critical stance. In the beginning, we were just talking about cool Pope news, but yeah, after the episode we did with Kai Oaks, it's probably also important to highlight bad Pope news. The Pope's he's a middle of the road guy. So
welcome to the Magnificast, where we give you fair and balanced reporting on the Pope.
That's right. The one and only Fair and Balanced Network on Pope News. He's a Lenin for our times, according to Alex Jones. It was a fun segment to do. Maybe we should revive it. We were like experimenting with segments for a while when we were dreaming up this show. I guess that's a little behind the scenes. If you if you haven't noticed, the show is like extremely ad hoc. We sort of pivot when we feel like we should, and we add things and take things away, and just kind of see what sticks. And that was something we tried for a while, and I guess we didn't feel like it stuck, but maybe it did. I don't know. Feel free to say so if it did. Maybe we'll keep on it.
Yeah. For sure, we could definitely bring some of those things back. The segments are always fun. Just, I don't know. I always describe this podcast to people as being, like, low effort. And by that, I mean, like, we don't plan a lot of it. But
it's true. As you can see.
Yeah, maybe we could. Always a possibility.
Always a possibility.
Yeah.
I also like the suggestion of doing a little more research on Palestinian theology of struggle. I've been reading a little bit about that lately, actually, so it might be something worth talking about. But I feel like we'd have to find somebody who's actually knowledgeable and good at saying something about that. So, I don't know, tweet us somebody that you know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It's also really nice to hear that people are making like connections with the larger Magnificast community. I have as well, and that's been really fun to like meet people out in the real world.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that a lot.
All right, cool. I'm gonna read an email that I thought was pretty neat, and I'll say why I singled this one out as we go. But here it goes. Hey guys, first off, happy 50th episode. Thank you. Personally, I've never run a podcast, but I'm sure that it takes a good amount of work and dedication, so it's awesome that you've come so far. Okay, true. Matt was just saying it is low effort. That's true. It's low effort, but it is also a good amount of work. Holy cow. Sometimes it's too much work, but
yeah, absolutely. So low effort in the sense that we like don't plan and script it out. High effort in the sense that like, I don't know, editing any piece of audio is high effort.
Yeah, editing audio, which we don't even do as well as we possibly could, and like lining up guests, all that kind of thing. But extremely cool, and everyone else should make one. All right, moving on. You guys are doing an amazing thing by making space for a group that rarely gets recognized. Before finding your podcast, I'd always felt pretty isolated being a Christian leftist, and even questioned if those two beliefs could go together. The fact that I go to Cornerstone University, and here's the shout out because that's my alma mater. That's where I did my undergraduate degree. The fact that I go to Cornerstone probably didn't help with that, questioning if these two things can go together. But generally, we aren't recognized in the public sphere either. Encouraging to you, I guess. I also did not find those two ideas, being a Christian and being a leftist, very encouraged at Cornerstone. For me, the Magnificast has largely relieved this tension since I get a weekly reminder that we do have a small but thriving Christian leftist community. Not only do I get to hear interesting discussions about books and articles, but also jokes about ridiculous things like PragerU. Thank you for showing people that Christian discourse does not have to be steeped in gross conservative rhetoric. No, it does not. Get that tea out of your water. Quit steeping it. That being said, I found this book, and she sent a picture of God's Not Dead 2, in an antique store a couple months ago. I love that it's in an antique store. It's already an antique. And thought it would be a great read and intellectual challenge for your next episode. Thanks again. Sincerely, your Cornerstone friend, as we'll call this person.
So I've got a lot of things to say.
Let's hear it.
Okay, they're mostly about God's Not Dead 2. So first of all, these are all very nice things to say. Glad this person feels less alone, that there's a community. That's really great. All those things, wonderful. 10 out of 10. So happy. God's Not Dead 2 is a book in an antique store. How is that something? Like, it is barely a movie that just came out, let alone a book. How is this possible? It can't be. It can't be a thing.
It's just it's antique because all the views expressed in it are old timey. It's a new movie, but it's an old timey idea.
That's true. Nietzsche, it's that old.
It's that old timey Nietzsche.
It's that old time. Give me that old timey Nietzsche. So it's a book and there's a movie. Did the Do you think the book came out first, or did the movie come out first?
Oh gosh, that I think the movie came out first, and this is the novelization of the film.
Ooh,
Just injecting some drama, some intrigue, the kind of thing that only a literary medium can really give you.
hang on, I'm gonna just figure this out really quick. I need to get to the bottom of this situation that we've gotten ourselves into. I need to know the answer. Okay, it is a paperback book. It is $10.19 on Amazon. It's not even an antique here. Let's see. The book came out in 2016. The film came out in 2016. Don't know what to say about that.
Well, this is pretty on brand for the Oscar episode because, like Oscar the Grouch, we are eating from the trash can of ideology right now.
Yeah. Do you think that Melissa Joan Hart is also in the book?
We can only hope. Melissa Joan Hart as herself.
As herself in the book. I think that God's Not Dead 2 would be better if it was actually starring Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
I mean, obviously, most things would be better.
If she was a lawyer that was sort of defending religious liberty, but secretly a witch, is definitely the movie I'd rather watch.
Yeah, I agree. Salem's just like ribbing her every time she comes home.
Sabrina.
Good. Well, I'm a little afraid of where we're going with this one. So I'm just gonna suggest we move to a final email before we get on to some other things we want to do in the show, so that it's not just a weird version of a clip show.
Are you sure you don't want to hear more about Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
I'm not sure that I don't want to, but I'm just gonna roll the dice.
Okay.
And decide that I don't.
Yeah, in sort of like the blooper reel here, I'll just talk more about Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Patreon subscribers only.
I don't know. I've watched like a ton of that show when I was a kid. I don't know if I could actually tell you about a single episode, which is I think pretty rare for me. So I don't know. I can tell you a lot about Clarissa Explains It All. I'm a real big Melissa Joan Hart fan, as it turns out, right now. Sort of a revelation late in life here. Okay. Yeah, I mean, she's great. A genius, ahead of her time. Visionary. Too bad she's a crap movie. Okay. So we do have another email that I think we can pull out here that'll be fun. Okay. So this person writes, one of my favorite episodes you guys did was, I'm sorry. Let me read that one. One of my favorite episodes you gals did was when you interviewed Amaria Armstrong and she discussed the problem of Christian universality. She examined the deeply flawed universality that Paul sets up by charting a lineage from Abraham to Sarah to the exclusion of Hagar. Hagar is figured as a racialized slave and a victim of rape who is cruelly excluded from the lineage of Christian salvation. The question is raised how this affects women of color who are to be excluded from universality and ultimately from salvation. I found this analysis eye-opening, and it seemed to pull a thread which deeply shakes the edifice of Scripture and the whole logic of Christian salvation. Whoa. Ethical universality, but especially the notion that Christianity can overcome hierarchies of identity, which is often how Galatians is read. Given this ethical legacy that is productive of slavery, how do we think about Christian devotion? What does prayer and devotional life look like when we take seriously an analysis like this? How is the tradition of Christian spirituality marked by this legacy of exclusion? And then this person says, after dropping that like absolute bomb of a question on us, says this: "Thanks, keep up all the good work."
Keeping it light.
Yeah, it's just really light over here. So listen, jerk. No, I don't know, Dean. What can we possibly say about this?
Shoot. Not a lot, I'm gonna say right off the bat. One reason is that I feel like this is kind of an ongoing issue that we've had on the podcast, which is basically like, how do you save Christianity? Despite the fact that it has produced so many bad things in the world. We've asked a few different guests this question, and I think it's an ongoing question, and it's one that I don't want to close the door on. So I'm hesitant to like give a definitive answer, but at least a provisional answer for me, I think, is basically to just echo what Marika Rose said on the episode that we had with her, where she was dealing with some similar problems, and we asked her something like this question, and she said, you kind of just have to own that as part of Christianity, as part of the Christian legacy, and learn to embrace it as part of this tradition, and fight against it from within, and not see yourself as sort of separate from that legacy, but a product of it in some ways. So I don't know, what does prayer and devotional life look like when you take that seriously? I guess it looks really complicated. I mean, it looks really hard. What does Christian spirituality look like? I think especially for people struggling with their own sort of cultural education and whiteness, it's difficult to figure that out, but something that we should keep talking about. I don't know. I don't have like a very easy solution, but I think being troubled by the question is probably the most important thing, at least for me right now in my own spiritual life.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think if there's 2 episodes that absolutely wrecked me, I guess in a good way, if you can be wrecked in a good way, were the episodes with Amaria and also, the episode with Marika. They're really striking conversations because they underline the ways that Christianity is complicit in oppression historically and even sort of theologically. Especially in Amaria's article that she wrote. I think that these things should really trouble us. And I don't know. I agree with you that Mariko is right that we shouldn't try to find ways to kind of get out of this and absolve ourselves of it. It's, I think, an inheritance that we have to deal with in some way. The question, though, is even more difficult because it's like, okay, so like we can intellectually understand those things. Like we can intellectually understand slavery, and we can understand exclusion, and we can understand colonialism and all kinds of things like that. But like the real problem is like finding a spirituality on the other side of that, in the sense of like, how do you still participate in like the church when you know those things are the case? And man, it is super difficult. It's a super difficult thing to think through. I guess the thing that makes me still a Christian, I think, even after knowing those things, is, I guess, like, I don't know, I still believe in God, so I guess that's a thing. But what keeps me a Christian is sort of the plasticity of the religion, and the tradition, in the sense that, like, it is really bad, but there are still some, like, really good people involved in it. Some people who are anti-colonialism, anti-oppression, who are abolitionists of all kinds. And I think those people keep me sort of within the church proper. But like, you kind of have to hold those things in tension and just hope for the best, I guess. There's one thing, I guess, okay, so encountering these really difficult problems and sort of the idea of like spiritual practice, sort of Christian devotion, what does prayer look like? I guess the thing I always come back to is something that's actually really simple and maybe might sound kind of stupid, but I have a really good pastor at my church who was also one of my professors in undergrad, and I like him so much because he's a really loosey-goosey kind of guy. Theologically, he's like not like a hardcore like orthodoxy kind of person. He's just he's chill. He's open to sort of like spirituality at large and isn't like really you know what I mean. Anyways, one thing that we practice in sort of the liturgy of our church is the prayers of the people, which is a cool thing. I mean, other churches probably do this too, but basically the community sort of shares whatever sort of like prayer out loud during church, and then like the congregation will say, "Lord have mercy." And the phrase "Lord have mercy," I think, is one that usually sticks with me because I guess it's just like embedded in my brain because this is like one of those liturgical practices that sticks with you. But I like the phrase "Lord have mercy" because it kind of functions in a really flexible way, in the sense like, Lord have mercy on us, Lord have mercy on them, Lord have mercy in the sense of like, oh my God, please don't judge us for this. Lord have mercy because like someone's doing something really awful. So it's like this really great sort of like prayerful covering of everything, like checking all your boxes, which might make it sound kind of lazy, but I don't know, to me that's what prayer life looks like. Just like mercy is the only thing that we can really hope for, I think, in a lot of situations.
Yeah, that's true. One other thing that also kind of came to mind as I was just thinking a little bit more about this, and listening to you talk about, these different ways that we kind of navigate these things in communities. One thing that Amaria says in her article and in the episode we talked about was if you can recover these people like Hagar in the biblical tradition, you can see that they're also part of the tradition. They're excluded in an important way, but in that exclusion, they sort of haunt it. And that you can't really get rid of people like Hagar within Christianity.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a really interesting thing to kind of experiment with. And we asked her on the podcast, are you trying to sort of build a counter tradition or a different tradition or something like that? And, that's maybe one way of kind of thinking about this. There are, I know some feminist theologians in particular, Rosemary Radford Reuther comes to mind, but there are many others who have tried to deal with this problem in terms of the biblical exclusion of women generally, and they've come up with all kinds of interesting strategies of trying to create counter memories within the tradition and build liturgies around women who are excluded in the biblical text itself, and trying to honor them through other spiritual practices that lift them up, in some cases over and against their oppressors, which sometimes the oppressors is the biblical text. I think there are probably a number of ways to keep that plasticity that you mentioned, Matt, open, and to try to incorporate some of these troubling insights into that plasticity. In part, I guess, so that we can combat those issues in our own tradition, but also so that we can keep sort of living with those problems.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I don't know. You said at the beginning of this question there's not like a great answer, but maybe we got as close as we can get.
Yeah, as close as we can get, that's for sure.
Yeah. We'll have to have Marika and Amaria back on to help us think through maybe some better answers still.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into a couple questions that I've prepared for you, Matt.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you're on the hot seat. You're the Magnificast guest this week. I don't know if you knew this, but 50th episode.
Really frightening, actually.
Now we can do these together. Here's the first one. What were some of your favorite episodes and guests, Matt? Maybe like what were your top 3?
I could probably be persuaded to change this top 3 because I think they're all good. Like each one of these episodes is like I don't know. I really like all of them. It's so hard to pick 3. But I think the Marika Rose episode is good because it basically like shook me so hard I'll never stop shaking. That was great. Yeah, I don't know. I think the Amari episode is also good for a sort of similar reason. It definitely opened my eyes to some ideas in theology that I guess I had not considered. And oh man, I don't know. They're all good. Okay, here's a deep cut. Fave episode, deep cut. I liked when we talked with Josh Christensen about Paul Virilio. That might be my like one of my fave episodes. Let's see. That is episode number 4, War in Cinema. That's really cool. It was a very fun episode. It was really good. So there, deep cut. Josh Christensen episode. It's a good one. Go back and listen to it if you want some extremely strange takes about Paul Virilio. That episode's an hour and 16 minutes long. Oh my gosh.
We were really finding our feet back then. It's a little embarrassing to listen to a few of them, but Josh is an amazing, brilliant person, so I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. What are your favorites? What are your top 3?
Dang. All right. Well, okay. I also really appreciated Amaria's and Marika's episodes, and I guess I'm going to choose 3 different ones, just to highlight instead. I really enjoyed the episode that we did with Dave McKee, episode 30.
Oh, yeah.
He is the provincial leader of the Ontario Communist Party. It was just really fun to listen to a guy who is part of a party and has a sympathetic take on Christianity, and I think did a really, really great job like presenting what the Communist Party of Canada cares about, and also his just general demeanor sort of expresses why I like hanging out with them a lot. Like they're very chill and nice and cool. So I really enjoyed that episode. I also liked the episode that we did with George Chicorreo-Meyer on Venezuela, just because it was a good chance to learn a lot about what's going on in a socialist country, and a country on the way to socialism, hopefully. So that was really great. And if I had to highlight a third episode, I would have to highlight one with with Derek Ford.
Yeah.
In part because he has been on the show 3 times more than anyone else.
Derek's the Justin Timberlake of Magnificast.
He really is, in more ways than one. Extremely good looking fellow. I think episode 12 that we did with him, Party On.
Yeah.
That was really fun because we read an article by Herbert McCabe and also some stuff by Lenin on religion and class struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate Derek's take and just his general kind of willingness to put up with our nonsense. So that was good.
Yeah. Oh, dang. Okay, so this is another deep cut. It was one of the weeks that you were gone, like 1,000 years ago. Episode 14, where John Birmingham and I talk about church camp. Do you ever listen to that one?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, it's pretty funny.
I did. I listened to it on the plane.
Oh, yeah. It's some good stuff.
Church camp, man. Just that disciplinary, evangelical society of control.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It was good. I'm scrolling through the old feed at the moment, and we got so many good episodes. Dang. We're so talented and smart.
We've got 50 of them.
Yeah.
I know.
50 whole episodes.
I mean, we have 49, but when you scroll through it again, there will be 50.
That's good. Yeah, good point.
All right, I'm gonna move right along here.
Oh yeah, okay. I could just go through each one of these and be like, "Oh man, that was a good episode."
Here's a question that actually Emily suggested I should ask you, and it's a very good one. What is something that you wish leftists knew about Christians, and what's something that you wish that Christians knew about leftists?
Yeah. Well, I guess I wish leftists knew that, like, Christians aren't dumb. Well, like, okay.
Which ones?
Yeah, well, some Christians. Yeah, I don't know. There's like we talked about this a little bit, like, with Brett from Rev Left, even, that, like, atheism is sort of like a thing on the left, probably for some good reasons, as we've talked about in other episodes. But there's sort of religion causes like a rift that is unnecessary, and like I mean like the themes that are just sort of inherent in like new atheism kind of bleed into that sometimes, and people end up thinking that like Christians are just like dumb people who believe in like weird irrational things. So I don't know. It'd be great if like when I went and talked to like other leftists who aren't Christians, like we could skip like that whole part of the conversation. But I don't know. For now, I guess we got to do it. So it'd be great. It'd be great just for them to know that like Christians are people who are actually smart and not irrational, and like, I don't know, believe in some type of weird cult thing. That would be a great starting point.
Solid. Dig that.
Yeah. I wish Christians knew that there are historically other Christians who are also communists. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, and that communism is actually good. I wish they knew those things. I think that those would be really great things, because like I feel like whenever I kind of broach the topic with a person, I always have to do all this like weird contextualization and like, well, actually there are all these other Christian communists and Christian socialists and Christian anarchists throughout history, and like this is not actually a weird stance to take. It's pretty normal if you think about it. It's just like lots of sort of like apologetics you have to do right off the bat with people, because this is such a foreign topic in so many ways. So if maybe more Christians knew a little bit about history, it'd be cool. I don't know. What do you think? How did you answer that question?
Okay. I wish that leftists knew that Christianity is very diverse and weird. That it's not a singular monolithic tradition. Maybe this kind of is a similar kind of thing that you had going, saying Christians are dumb. But Christianity is just full of so many different kinds of people and different kinds of Christians, and to kind of disparage Christianity or other religious traditions just on some kind of vague idea of materialism really ignores the actual practices of so many people.
Yeah.
Literally billions of people. That is what Cornel West was talking about in the Opium of the People episode we did, where we talked about an essay he wrote, sort of communicating that to leftists, that you shouldn't really write off a lot of Christians in a lot of parts of the world, but try to understand how they actually show up. So that's how I feel about leftists. I wish that Christians knew that leftists don't want to take your toothbrush. That's like a common leftist retort to private property worries. But I think that a lot of Christians hear leftists talk about private property and talk about other sorts of things like expropriation and having common goods and all that kind of thing, and they worry about their own safety, which I think is not really a good Christian reaction, but B, also not actually what leftists want. They don't want to ruin your life. I mean, most of you. They don't want to ruin your life because you probably don't actually own a whole lot of means of production yourself in the first place. So yeah, I think just clarifying some of those misconceptions and trying to understand what leftists actually genuinely want positively in the world, like what kinds of ideas they've come up with. I mean, there's so many different ways that leftists have thought about how to organize our society according to people actually thinking about how it will work rather than according to people desiring things for no apparent reason. I think that is something that I wish Christians paid more attention to.
Yeah, that sounds like good answers.
All right, last thing.
Okay.
What do you want to do in the next 50 episodes, Matt?
Man, I just want to keep on keeping on, really. I want to talk to more cool people. I want to read more books. And I want to do more Pope news. Just committing to that. I want to... Here, in the next 50 episodes, I want to unseat Joel Osteen from his iTunes throne. I want to cast down that guy, send him away.
Cast him right
with
down.
No subscribes, no likes, no faves. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be cool. That'd be a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
I want Joel Osteen to become so annoyed with me he blocks me on Twitter. There. Yeah, I don't know.
Living your best block now.
That seems pretty doable. What do you want to do in the next 50 episodes?
Same, I guess, but that's too easy, so I'll say something else. I'd like to explore some issues that we haven't gotten around to in the last 50 episodes. I'd really like to talk more about indigenous struggles in North America. We had one episode with Melanie Campen a long time ago, kind of talking about some of her research on residential schools, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But there's so much out there that's really exciting and good and especially important for Christians, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to dig into that a little bit. I'd like to kind of keep looking for things we haven't really talked that much about. We haven't done a whole ton of stuff on queer folks generally.
Yeah.
We haven't done a whole lot of work on... there's a whole host of issues that we'll keep adding to, I guess. But yeah, that's what I hope that we can do the next 50 episodes, kind of keep rounding out some of the guests and topics that we've worked on in the last 50.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds better than the Joel Osteen thing, but Joel Osteen thing's good too.
They should go together.
Yeah, I think so. That's really cool. Neat. Well, I guess we just gotta do it. Just doing it. 2018.
Really, just doing it. Just really doing it. Really doing it. Just doing it.
That's the hashtag for this year. It's a great one.
140 characters.
Yeah. Well, those are the plans that we have for the future. Hopefully, you will keep listening to us and help us get them done. I think one of the really cool things about the Magnificast has just been sort of the community that's grown around it. I've really appreciated that on Twitter and on Facebook. It's been really fun interacting and talking and just like knowing that people are listening and getting into it. I don't know. It's a cool thing. So thank you all so much for sticking around and retweeting and sharing our content and responding in all the ways that you have. It's been really nice and uplifting. Cool. So thanks to all of our nice listeners out there.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that note of gratitude. It's also really just amazing that we've had so many people who are supportive of what we're doing and are trying to extend it and add to it and do their own thing and find ways of connecting to it. And we've also been very encouraged to find out that there is really a Christian left and that there are people looking for other ways to connect. And it's amazing that people have helped us pay our bills for the podcast through Patreon.
Yeah.
It still blows me away every month that people are willing to kick in and help offset the costs a little bit. It just makes a huge difference that we can't really underline enough. But also amazing that people contribute in non-financial ways, whether that's just by interacting on Twitter and having a conversation. I mean, I love goofing off with folks. That's really good. People giving us iTunes reviews and things like that. It's just fun to kind of see people contributing in ways that make sense for them. And yeah, I mean, the fact that we made these buttons, we made this t-shirt, and we made a whole lot of friends along the way. It's just been a wild ride, a good year. It's crazy to me that it's been a whole year. It doesn't really feel like that. Yeah. But you know what they say, time flies when you're having fun making a podcast.
Communism was just the friends we made along the way.
That's right. I think,
man,
that's what they'll say.
If this was in the video medium, I think to round this episode out, we could just have a nice sort of montage of the last year. It would be mostly pictures of my wife and I folding up t-shirts, but that's what we could do.
Yeah, that and building a very precarious stack of books to put my microphone at the top of each week.
Yeah.
Great. Well, again, thanks for listening. Next week, Matt is going to be here in Toronto visiting Emily and I. And if you live here or near here, he's giving a talk at the Institute for Christian Studies in Toronto. And it is free and open to the public. So if you're in the area, come and hang out. I know that there are other Magnificast folks that are going to be there. So that's pretty cool. Also, like we said, numerous times in this episode, please feel free to leave us an iTunes review. Go ahead and look into all the guests that we've got on this podcast. It wouldn't really be much without having so many interesting people willing to say yes to having these conversations. So I don't know, buy their books, read their articles. Like, we have them on because we genuinely like them and we think that they're great and worth promoting. So please go out of your way to show them that support as well. I don't know what else to say except thanks so much. And we'll see you next week. Also, for those who want to know, the music in this podcast, the intro and the transitions are by Amaria Armstrong, the very one that we already talked about as a fantastic guest. And our outro, as always, is by the Illogical Spoon. You can find them on Bandcamp and dabble in their music and kick them a couple of bucks.
I don't wanna get up for church in the morning, souls alive. Heaven come to earth and there won't be no church. We'll meet down by the riverside. There we'll swim with all creation. Never get tired, never bored. Don't worry, someday there'll be no dam between us and our Lord.